All right, so I guess we are now streaming to YouTube. We should be live. So I guess that we can give these 3 minutes and we start at 5. So 5 in Portugal. I'm not sure what the time is at your locations, but we still have 3 minutes, so we can just wait a bit and see if everything is all okay. Let's start. I guess we are now streaming to YouTube. We should be live. So I guess that we can give these 3 minutes and we start at 5. So 5 in Portugal. I'm not sure what the time is at your.
We hear the streaming happening right now. Is that
might be me? Yeah, let's see.
We're hearing voices from the past.
Let's see if it gets better. Are you still hearing?
Not now. Not now.
All right, so I might have something wrong with the audio.
Yeah, I guess we just heard the YouTube recordings. Yeah. So we will hear us in a couple of seconds again.
Yeah, I think it was just me. I had the window open, but I've now turned off the sound, so it should be fine. I hope so. All right, so I was giving it a few more seconds, but I guess that we can probably start. So please to welcome our speakers, and if you notice anything strange about the stream, just please write on the chat or drop me some message in some way, and we'll try to fix it. So welcome to Ciclo de Conversas Design in Multimedia. So this year we are actually doing 2 events at the same time. So during the months of April, and this is the first session, till the end of May, we will have 2 events. So the first one is Ciclo de Conversas Design in Multimedia, which is organized within the scope of the Bachelor and Master courses in Design in Multimedia here at the University of Coimbra. And the second event is called CMD Talks, and it's organized in the context of the doctoral program in computational media design, also here at the University of Coimbra. So the first session, we will welcome the studio Current. So the current is an interdisciplinary, intercultural collective working at the intersection of art, architecture, science, and technology. Current was founded by Provides, Ellie, Ya, and Art. I'm sorry for not saying the last names, but I will not attempt to say them because for sure I'll say them wrongly, so I prefer to keep these. Their collaborative digital practice is driven by an interest in reciprocal relationships between virtual and physical spaces. Through the medium of volumetric cinema, Current delineates the multiplicity of features in attention economy and its materials manifestation. Current has been exhibiting and teaching worldwide, including Rishki's Museum, Twent, the Bartlett UCL, Golkbot Festival, Culture Hub LA, UCLA, Sci Art Lab, Super Collider Gallery, and many more. This is the bio that's available at our website. And so if you want to check it out and also the other sessions, just access the website. And now, without further ado, I pass on the floor to our guest speakers, and feel free to start your presentation.
Yeah, we're very happy to be here, and thank you so much, Juan and Pedro, for inviting us. This is actually our first talk in 2023, and we're just looking forward to enjoying it with you. So, hi, we're Current. First, we'll introduce ourselves.
Hi, my name is Yanzi, and basically I'm an artist, but with, let's say, solid theoretical background. That's why my art is located somewhere in between this, like, artistic side and like engineering or programming side. So, from that perspective, I will try to explain the current situation that we are experiencing right now.
Cool. So, hi, I'm Provides. I'm actually architecture designer and researcher. Currently, I am studying at the Chinese University of Hong Kong and also teaching at the Bartlett School of Architecture.
Hi, my name is Artem Konevskih, and I'm artist and machine learning engineer. I studied computer sciences and spent some time working on like particle acceleration and urban analysis and different technical stuff. But I've always been interested in arts. So at some point I moved to this field, and currently I'm working with artists by helping them to implement machine learning approaches in their art, and I also teach in machine learning for artists.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Jotiva. I'm from Bulgaria, but I'm based in Los Angeles, and I work at the intersection of art and science. I'm always looking for ways to bridge the physical and the digital through light installations, ephemeral objects, XR projects. I like to collaborate with scientists that use alternate imaging tools and data to kind of reveal the invisible forces that influence us. Like in my last big project, I used an MRI scanner to extract the nerves around my heart, my vagina, and my feet, and then I presented them as an audiovisual installation and an AR experience. I also work as a visualization research artist at the Advanced Visualization Lab at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. I teach in various schools and universities, and I run my own studio practice.
Cool stuff. So, what is Current? I guess when we first conceptualized it back in 2019, it was at the intersection of these 4 core ideas, which is the live stream economy, volumetric cinema, AI deepfakes, and personalized narrative. And I think for this talk, we'd like to just look back and see how much has changed and how much has not changed.
In some ways, Current is a mashup of all the digital content that exists or is yet to exist.
a project that stand at the convergence of four technological ideas, but actually they are also very socially related.
Couldn't wish to speculate on how this potential can help to authenticate the truth, especially in situation of global crisis.
无论国际风云如何变幻，中欧。
As an affective experience, it presents you, the active viewing participant, with a current of audiovisual sensations that entrance your perception of time and space. It imagines being able to step into a river of real-time content that responds and regenerates from your embodied experiences. In a sense, producing a biofeedback system between your body and digital culture itself.
When current guys told me about their project, I was completely hooked up by the idea of volumetric cinema. The idea that we can break up linearity of cinematic narrative and make it not only time but also spatially distributed multi-branch narrative seems to me the next step of cinematic language.
Virtual reality and gaming industry converging with streaming and meeting services, providing people with spatial dimension in their communication. Not only communication, but the whole approach for perceiving events are changing, going from discrete constrained points of view to continuous navigatable space formed from this initial data. Let's see, fill in the gaps between evidences.
Live stream, AI, material.
Yeah, so that's not really the film. That's just an introduction to the film. If you want to watch the whole thing, you can just go on YouTube. We're open source. I guess we'll talk over also a bit of the ideas that we were discussing back in 2019, including predictive modeling and outsourcing imagination, which are some of the case studies we think that artificial intelligence might actually step into when you have a continuous current of yourself from yesterday, tomorrow, the day before, and when you're mixing your tomorrow with my yesterday, we're essentially doing a predictive modeling in a collaborative sense. And to outsource imagination is also inspiring how we're going from montage to transitioning, which we're really just compressing frames. And once we expand it, you're filling the bits with content aware, which is sort of like how neural networks like GANs are working nowadays, that you compress into a model and then you expand it again. Guys, want to add anything?
Probably not right now.
Cool.
Markovka. Yeah, maybe the idea of blockchain cameras as a way to authenticate truth in an AI landscape that's artificially created. How can we like chain together cameras that might be using alternative frequencies to authenticate truth or existing on the blockchain, as well as ideas around micro-licensing from various small aspects of landscapes, and how the act of seeing and entering this kind of current can become a sort of currency. So our attention and our economy, the attention economy and our gaze becomes part of that currency of exchange.
Yeah, we also had this big debate or argument of whether current is a platform, which is like a hype word back in 2019, or it's just a cinema, but obviously now we know. Yeah, and we were really intrigued by the non-human perspective, because when we're researching a live stream, we see that there are actually billions of minutes of videos of bear cams or eagle cams that are looking at absolutely nothing. And it's like also this mundane moments rather than the cinematic moment that we think will actually overturn how we produce, because once we're doing live stream, we're actually have this infinite feed of data together. And when we match that together, the narrative is not linear anymore.
Yeah, we were really inspired by like long-term cinema and the idea of integrating alternative perspectives, non-human, whether that's landscapes or animals, into the story to produce more empathetic experience of what cinema might look like.
Or machines, like autonomous car perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing here is that like cinema is a tool how to tell a story which evolves in huge amount of time. Let's say, yeah, like a year of camera watching the North Pole, for example, where most of the time nothing happens, but the machine have this ability and time, let's say, yeah, to see all of these frames and collect the final edit for you with the thing that you you able to perceive in a short amount of time. Yeah, this is from just source information compressed into the let's say cinema.
Yeah, and just tie this back to
Specific
the
type of cinema.
just tie this back to the blockchain camera. Once we've accumulated enough data, we can actually just reconstruct theoretically the entire world with all this infinite live stream. And that actually authenticates the truth, because you're not getting to the image and not seeing what's behind the camera. You're actually seeing every point of the same event.
Yeah, it becomes really hard to lie to the system, because each of the camera has its own data position and own information, and since they are interconnected, it's hard to fake something there, because if something has changed in one camera, like other cameras will feel this.
Yeah. Yeah, so ultimately from this talk, we wanted to say is that it's really not about what type of new tech will come out tomorrow, but how our modes of production will actually change due to innovative ways of collaboration and creation. So that will happen tomorrow. And we wanted to start from this concept of volumetric cinema. Like, what is it? We actually don't know, like the rest of you, but we know there are relevant ideas like virtual reality, video gaming, and now it's really for us to define from our modes of production what volumetric cinema is and what the added value can be. And for a preliminary, we're putting forward that actually is a spectrum of space and place. And what control the spectrum is actually the autonomy of user being able to participate in the system. Ouch. Okay, yeah. We're going to do something fun. We're going to watch some movies.
Yeah, this talk will be organized more or less about cinema and like volumetric cinema in a way, but with more expanded look on that through the like neural networks and all the recent breakthroughs in technology and how they affect to the term cinema itself.
Yeah. So this is the kid from the corridor, and you can see the cameras behind him, and this gives sort of estrangement, and then he stops. And he look at this most mundane door, 237. It's like the rest of the door in the hotel, nothing special about it, but then we're scared. It's almost like the everyday object. Why does it make us scared? And I think it has a lot to do with the space because of the corridor, which is like an extremely elongated proportion. And it gives this uncanny feeling. So even when, and the most generic the doors are, the more scary it gets. And then at the end of it, you see a perfectly symmetrical figure standing in this very narrow space. And suddenly it turns this into a place, a scary place. So really, I love Kubrick because what it does is just giving all this arrangement in a 2D frame, and then it turns the space into a place. For instance, this is the main space that everyone passed by, but then it's actually not such a simple space. You see Native American mural on the left, and then you see this super westernized way of decorating a home. You see the fireplace, which is super domestic, but then the work furnitures are super managerial. So for me, there's so much contradiction in this space that makes it uncanny and scary in a sense.
And I would like to add that this Shining movie is kind of happening in this liminal space environment, and which is a big theme right now, or I don't know, is that a good word, big theme, but there are certain videos on YouTube called Backrooms, which they are working with this theme of infinite liminal spaces, and they it's a lot of that kind of videos. Yeah, they may last like really long time, and they all about some person stuck in this liminal space forever. Yeah, it's just going from one corridor to another, to from one room to another, and it's all happening in kind of hotelish space, and it also produces the same feeling, this uncanny feeling.
Yeah. So also in this really uncanny space, you have the most architectural object ever, which is the physical model before a building is produced. And this time it's a physical model of the maze. And what this does is that it facilitates a sort of authoritative masculine gaze because you're looking down into the object that you create. So it's the creator perspective, right? And naturally, the guy who gazes at it is the bread maker in a household. And he didn't choose just anywhere to write his novel, not in the hotel room, which will be more quiet, not in a semi-outdoor space where he can get fresh air, but he chooses really big, empty lobby where he asserts his authority as the writer in a space. The next thing is this sort of meme that I always go back to. I love the tie, but I wasn't born when this tie was actually really common in the 70s and 80s. So again, Kubrick took the most mundane common object and turned that into a symbol of scary tie that I'm sure nobody's going to wear it since the movie. So that's why I just love him. And I think from cinema, we can also learn a lot about the cultural landscape. For instance, I'm a Chinese, and in Chinese cinema, when you have a scene where everyone's dining around the table, you would always have the camera looking at everyone because you're trying to, because dining around a round table is like an interrelation between people. It shows a relationship. But for a lot of Western cinema, what it does is that when you're eating, it zooms into your face, because when you're eating, you're relaxed, you're consuming, and then the actor will sort of show the hidden side of his emotional feeling. So just by analyzing this frame and how the camera is positioned within a room, you can already analyze the different cultural landscape, representation, etc. This scene, we look back a lot when we were producing Current, is a scene that everything everywhere happening all at once, obviously. And I also love this movie because there are no protagonists. Everyone's a protagonist, and there's no hero journey because the only journey you get to take, it's to not die. You win it by not dying. And at the same time, this scene is sort of like it's not a junk space, but it's junk time because everyone's stuck in this harbor. They're sort of like in this limbo that Yancy was mentioning. And it is through the actor's position towards the camera, you can see where the camera is throughout the whole scene. So inspired by it, we sort of just put it into photogrammetry. And this was our first experiment of the time voxel, where you can see all of the line traces back to where the camera is. It's not perfect, but so you can see traces of it. And what it does is really just adding information, because you're extracting from 2D and then expand that to 3D. But what this one is doing here is that you have X, Y, Z. You swap the C with time, so it's a time voxel. You turn it 90 degrees and then you smash it onto a 2D frame. And from this, it's sort of like a histogram of cinema. You can see the frequency of the different scenes, the frequency of the tempo, the transitioning moments of the movie. It is a montage of not the event, but the transitioning moments. And this play with 2.5D actually starts from the very beginning of cinema, right? Like this Journey to the Moon is actually the perfect example of 2.5D movie. And once you stack it up, it reveals the traces, the agency of the cinematic object. Every time there's a new technology that comes up, 2.5D is the first thing that we experience. And same for the AI cinema. We actually looked at this together like last week. It's just a perfect example of how new technology provoked 2.5D explorations. None of this is 3D, but it gives the illusion. And even the AI doesn't understand 3D. But how does it really generate all of the camera move, all of the angles, etc.? Artem is probably the expert on it. But yeah, I think we'll talk more about AI cinema later on.
Yeah, it's a really crucial point, and I think I will mention this later about this. When we were making Current, one of our main ideas was about volumetric cinema, about this big shift from 2D, let's say, content to 3D, yeah, and what is happening right now after 4 years is, as always in a human history, it's not that obvious how it will happen, yeah, and so it all going not the like real 3D direction. It appeared to be like a hybrid vision. So it's like latent neural space where you can navigate in 3D, yeah, but it's not a real 3D. It's kind of another approach for that.
Yeah, in a sense, it's almost 1D.
Pan right and pull back. Stop.
Early examples of 3D navigation in 2D content.
Yeah, I
we
think
love this.
this scene from Blade Runner is a perfect example of how modern text-to-video neural networks work, because he asked the machine to show him some perspectives and some images of the room that are that wasn't on the photograph that he found on the place. And actually, it's the same mechanism how you can generate videos today, just providing prompts to the neural network and then receiving new imagery. And you can also like provide the initial image that will be like a starting point for the whole video, or yeah, for the image sequence. So I think it was kind of prophetic video, and especially there are these text-to-image neural networks. They are like general, but there are some specific neural networks that trained to reconstruct the environment just from one photo, and you can also like navigate this environment so that will continuously create different points of view on the same room. Of course, it will be not a real environment, but anyway, it looks pretty realistic.
Oh yeah, and this is sorry, this is a real good point about what we'll have next in our talk is the way like interface works in this example, because as you may see, the Harrison Ford just talking to the stool. Yeah, it's like audio input, and it's not an like traditional interface with like a lot of I don't know, keyboard, mouse, and so on. He just talks to the machine.
Yeah, we feel so strongly about this clip because it was actually the moment when we first thought about blockchain camera. 2019 was a year of a lot of stuff, a lot of big protests, and the media, the journalists, we always only see what's in front of the camera. We don't see what's behind the camera. We don't see the people at home. So this scene where he can just move the virtual camera a little bit and see the real person behind the column, that was really powerful for us. Yeah, and this is really like not a new idea. If we just go back to the Dutch golden age, probably the Arnolfini portrait, I love it so much. It really gives the sense of space. You see the light coming from the window behind the couple falling on the floor. It really elongates the proportion of the room. And then the bed that is slightly higher than normal, it makes the room way more intimate. So just by arranging object, the proportion of the space has changed. And if you look into the centerpiece, which is the mirror, you begin to see this blue person who might be the one that is looking into the room. And suddenly it creates so much question that the story visualizes in front of you just by playing with perspective. Of course, another perfect example is Las Meninas. All of the architects love this painting because Michel Foucault loved this painting because he wrote about it in The Order of Things. And it's a very playful painting because when you look closely at it, the painter is inside the painting. And it's one of the earliest painting in the Western history that the painter is portrayed in the painting. So you understand how important it is to the royal family. And he's looking at perhaps himself, but if he's looking at himself, it means that he's looking out to the painting into a mirror. But then on the other side, there's also a mirror. So it gives you this trick on perspective where you don't really know whether you're the couple in the mirror or you're the painter in the mirror or you're just another person in the room. So much mystery is tied to this just by playing with perspective. Yeah, so we really think that overturns what authorship is. And 300 years ago, it's by portraying the author inside the room. But 300 years after today, authorship is overturned by this collaborative scene where, we're not just frame to frame transition, we're world to world transition. So the user navigate the space. They are also part of producing the narrative as they navigate it.
Yeah,
and for
this
us,
is sorry. Yeah, this is an important thing when back in the days, or even right now, we have this like movie director, yeah, and he is doing the montage, and you see what the director wants you to see, yeah. Because it always manipulates your attention and like changing the scenery and stuff. But what this movement from 2D content to 3D means is that actually you like in most cases you moving through the space and controlling what you see. So in that case, the producers of this content, they make in an environment, yeah, and not the actual frame, not the actual point of view provided by director. Yeah, in that case, like director and viewer, they are kind of merging in one substance when, for example, you watch the movie. And another thing, like happening at this point is, for example, in VR space, if you experiencing like you yourself in 3D space, it's really like this traditional movie cut not really works because it breaks the whole world around you, yeah, and replace it with another one. And this is kind of hard for your brain when like it's probably it's emergency for your body, yeah. If everything changes all of a sudden, probably you should like run or something, like because it's earthquake or I don't know, sudden teleportation.
Yeah.
And so that's why we are talking about this world-to-world montage that probably will help us to perceive.
Yeah, if you can just mute this and go to like 645. This is we can share this link with you guys too, but it's a really great visualization of volumetric cinema, and the idea of being able to reconstruct a space and then enter inside of different viewers. So when you have this 3D space, you're able to pop in and out of different characters, right? Like you can be the bandit, you can be the horse, you can be the sky, you can be the bird in the sky. So yeah, that's a really good link. We'll share it with you guys.
Arctum?
Yeah, and when we speak about volumetric cinema, we couldn't like ignore the whole experience of game design, because games are video games are in certain point also like volumetric storytelling, and it has its own context, its own specifics, because there is like some rules of the game, some aim, like some goals to achieve, and so on, which can be like omitted in the cinema. But anyway, we still have a lot of things in common. So one of the things, please go back. Yeah. So one of the things is how the world is actually built. Like we can define the story, the main characters. We can define the rules how this world is operates. But the high level is an environmental storytelling. So it's how we can actually tell the story without telling anything, just showing the environment. So it's a big way, like how we can navigate a player or viewers through the space, through the story, by designing certain environment. Like we can block the ways how player can go. So we can lead him or her to a certain point where certain event will happen, and so on. We can add some NPC characters. We can add some details that telling us something about epoch, or about events happening in this area, and so on. And another way how we can affect the viewer's emotion is to use camera. Like video games, you can, like, depending on how you locate the camera, you can achieve different effects. Like for the strategy games, the god view, like from the top to the scene, is more preferable, because the player has to see the whole scene, not just a part of it. But for the other games, like action games, you should see provides. Can you move to the next slide? Yeah. So yeah, for the action games, you need to see the world from the perspective of the main character, so you can actually feel the connection to the character, and sometimes it can be dynamic, like you can see the character from a little bit aside, so when nothing happens, but when the scene became intense, you can get even closer, like on the next slide. Yeah, like for example, for the horror movies, they usually use this first person view because it sets like the viewer, the player, like inside the scene, so it actually can feel what's going on there. And like the rule of thumb here is that the more distant the camera, the the less emotions, the less empathy we have to reveal to the character, and the closer it is, the more we can relate to them. Yeah, so I think it works both in games, in cinema, and but yeah, I really recommend to watch these videos. They analyze how it's actually done in games and in volumetric environment, and also there are a bunch of useful links in the comments. Also recommend to check them.
Yeah, by the
scroll
way,
down to the comments.
The shot from Shining provides showed before. It's also a good and strange example of this third person kind of camera in cinema, like back in the days, yeah. Because it makes this emotional situation with just the camera work, yeah. So the camera is always behind this little bicycle, and we feel strangely related to this situation with this simple approach.
Yeah. Yeah, so with the characters in a video game, we also want to talk about the digital personas nowadays.
Yeah, over the last few years, we've seen this kind of rise of CG or computer-generated influencers. Like I'm sure you're all familiar with little Michaela, who has like 30 million followers. And her account is run by a creative agency. It follows her life in this way that she goes through breakups, even, you know, especially during the COVID lockdowns, we've had this surge of CG influencers from all over the world kind of gaining popularity on social media. And it really brings up implications on mortality. What is really important here, these characters can never die, and they present this sort of unrealistic idea of what bodies should look like. And I think it's an important relationship there between AI and our mortality, right? What does this communicate to our real human aging bodies as we die? And maybe what is the aspect that we can bring as humans that is precisely related to our mortality that is different than AI?
And here, here is also some interesting things to say about the actual tech behind this. Yeah. So one of them uses like 3D models, yeah, like pure 3D models, and they are kind of personas. Some of them uses hybrid approach when they like replace the head with a 3D one, and use the photo of the real thing, let's say real environment with real people, just replacing the face. And another thing is For example, deepfake just replaced the face, yeah. But there are some weird examples when, for example, you have a 3D character and you want him to be like more real, yeah, and you making a database for the deepfake of your fake 3D person and like replace it in the real footage. So that's why it's not a pure replacement. I don't know how to explain. It's just this recursive neural networks where one is the source for another, or maybe the source is a 3D, not a like neural or real photo.
Yeah, and right now with development of stable diffusion and control net, it gets even further. Like the case that Yancy is describing, it's when you take a 3D model and like place the face of this 3D model to the like real head. But with the control net, you can use a 3D model as a depth map that controls the neural network to generate completely new person with the same form of the head. So it's like different techniques and different possibilities to generate like as a new people or use like these 3D puppets to create like fake videos of existing people as well. So a big topic, I think, for
yeah.
From the present to the past, this is just for some history and context of how the rigging technology has developed over time. From the earliest forms of motion tracking and animation was used using rotoscope devices, where animators would literally use real film footage to draw over the actors in order to produce this kind of realistic movement of the animated characters, like in Snow White or Alice in Wonderland. And then since then, we've had VFX animation industries using multiple sensors or machine vision algorithms to compute the exact position of the body, producing what is called a rigged virtual skeleton that relies on these data points as they're moving through space. It's usually called motion tracking or capture, mocap for short. And now we have neural nets that allow for pose estimation of like one single image without any fancy sensors can give us that kind of movement of the body through time.
Yeah, I also really like this 3D model that we see on the bottom of the page called SMPL 3D model, and it's parametric model where you can adjust all the parameters, and depending on parameters, it takes different shapes, different sizes, different faces. So basically, the neural network here can adjust it to fit the certain photo. Yeah.
Almost all humanity like represented in this mathematical model.
Yeah.
At least wide range, yeah. And here's the latest examples of how you can achieve the motion capture like at home. So it's really like democratizing the field, because yeah, previous time you have to spend a lot of time, spend a lot of money to have this motion capture suit with these special markers or inertial sensors. And right now it's just a bunch of iPhones standing in a circle and pointing the central point. So I've tested both of them, and like this Move AI is just making like ready for production animation just with the use of 2, 4, let's say 6 iPhones, which is dramatically cheaper and accessible.
Yeah, and the second element we think is the environment reconstruction.
Which is already has been happening with Google Earth for some time, and the ability to jump into any part of the world through it that is reconstructed through different satellite technology. And Markovka next. And then there's also the plugin for Unreal Engine is released and presents photogrammetry scans of the whole planet available for geospatial games. So anybody can download this plugin and use it in their Unreal Engine marketplace and visit physical environments in 3D.
Yeah, and actually you can use this Cesium. It's an online platform, where you can upload your 3D scans, and they have a nice 3D tiling tool, so you can also use it in WebVR by loading like huge locations. So it's really nice. I'm really a big fan of Cesium.
So basically, Cesium is just a platform for segmentation, big amounts of data, which leads us to like possibility of having the whole planet, to experience the whole planet through the 3D
interface,
like gaming,
like Microsoft Flight Simulator, but on like a city scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's what we mentioned before, that, for example, when we were making current, the approach was like this true 3D, like how much we can like upload into the model and navigate these 3D spaces. But this one is another step forward, where 3D and neural like merges together, because this is the hybrid view, and the one of the biggest advantages of nerves is you can imagine that it's like a 3D, like 3D reconstruction, photo scan, or that kind of things, but they have shaders on every surface. So you kind of skip in this big stage where you're drawing all the textures on each object and making materials out of it. And here is like a compressed everything what you need to visually express the world around you. And recently we saw another step forward towards these guys to merge together. It's like Unreal Engine uses nerves to.
Sorry, Jens, for interrupting. I just explain a little bit what's going on.
Too excited.
Because what we saw on the previous slide in previous video and what we have seen here is neural rendering. So it's not an actual 3D model, but it's an environment that was reconstructed from the multiple photos, like almost the same like photogrammetry, but even more advanced, because the neural networks are like differentiable, and they can reconstruct even those parts of the scene that are not on the photos. So it gives you a better scene representation. And what the guys did here in this plugin is that they mixed these two ways of representing 3D environment. Yes, this neural rendering with
Whoops.
Artem
So
is
you
stuck
can see the visual marks of that nerve is, for example, this table, the camera that's around the table, and you see the how it reflects the light around, and this is not possible. For example, table and vegetation, they have different optical properties, but in terms of like traditional photogrammetry, you will have just color information and geometry information, but not these optical qualities. So yeah, in this example, we see how all that advantages they're coming together in this in this game engine.
Yeah, there's also a lot of discussion about digital twins or volumetric replicas of cities, especially around the hype of the metaverse. And usually in our workshops, we like to teach our participants how to extract terrains from cities, from satellite databases, and then to start more critically thinking about how we can infuse those digital spaces and the replicas of environments with the kind of invisible data that exists, that's there, that's available to us, that we might not be able to feel with our bodies. So how can we show what is not normally seen in the real world? And next, an example of that is like a project using real-time environmental data inside of simulations is Rafiq Anadol's project, where he has a digital twin map of Boston overlaid with wind patterns that he's pulling in real time from weather data APIs. Next. I also have a project about that, but it's not in the slides. An example of also using real-time environmental data and how can we use frequencies that exist beyond the visible spectrum as a way to kind of validate the authenticity of reality. So thinking of the way that a hologram functions on money to validate its purpose, but instead translating that to cinematic space. So in some of our early deepfake discussions, we were wondering, what if we can take this expanded color that's available for advanced camera capturing technologies in order to advance or validate the authenticity of footage.
Yeah. So we want to summarize what our vision is with the pink slide, which is the power of the collaborative pipeline. These are all of the roles that is needed in a cinema scene for you to actually output a movie. And today with artificial intelligence, there's just 4 of us, and then we're able to make something in 2 weeks. And when we teach the workshop, the students are able to make something also in 2 weeks. So we see how the power of the open source is operating here.
And this is also important thing I've noticed like nowadays is that I have a feeling that is a big shift happening from, let's say, tools. When you, for example, you have a hammer and you can like do what hammer could do, but you're doing it with your hand. But what we see right now is that these neural networks, for example, they can assist you, they can help you, they can make a lot of work for you, but it's not the same as a hammer in your hand. It's more like a person you talk. So I think it's really important to understand when you work with neural networks that it's that's why it's like human artificial executors. It's not human and the tools, it's human and non-human working together. This is also I don't know, right now it looks kind of old, but it was just a year ago, actually, this breakthrough, or 2 years ago. So this virtual production is what is important about this in our talk, is that production and post-production, they're merging together also, because you are experiencing in the real time on the like filming side, you kind of see the final frame of the movie, and before it was impossible, like totally. All what you had was some storyboards and like some visualization how it possibly could be, but and this also affects how, for example, director behave, yeah, and how the whole team operates, and how you can like switch ideas right on the stage, or yeah, before it was simply impossible because it was like planned before, yeah, and even if you understood that this is not work, you still super limited in that case. But yeah, right now it's more flexible.
Yeah, the real-time feedback loop between different roles on a scene.
Yeah, and since we like explained a lot of instruments, they sound kind of chaotic, and it's a different field and so on, but that's why we have some let's say platforms or places where all this different data can gather. And for example, this is Omniverse by NVIDIA, and this is I think it's even it's hard to explain what's that, because not a really just game engine like Unreal Engine. Yeah, Omniverse is a wider thing, and it can incorporate way way more things inside of this one like environment. Yeah. For example, part of this Omniverse is a special piece of software where you can test your, for example, real robot arm, or autonomous driver. Yeah, and all these simulations, they're happening inside the Omniverse, and they connected to the real car or robot or whatever. So in that case, it's forming another feedback loop between the whole 3D world and the real parts and like in the real world, and they feeding back each other. So this is also I think big shift in understanding. We even don't have the proper words right now for that. For example, NVIDIA calls this Omniverse, but probably it's something else. It's like more expanded.
Yeah, and I think how it affects us as real human in a society is that, especially for architects, is that the financing between the modes of production has totally changed. Before, each of the software charges you $1,000 a year, and now because they form this financial alliance where they're able to share data between one another, so the whole financing becomes micro values that sometimes it's in a form of data licensing, other times it's in a form where you have advertising, and it's not anymore where we have to crack the software, but more like we use their free production service, and in return, we're contributing data to the system. And of course, we see that in the Creative Commons, but not in monetary value, but in credentials. We have three summary ideas. This is the second one is the automated cinema with the language models.
Yeah, here is some examples of latest advancement in artificial cinema, and you can see that it somehow looks like it's more like a joke. Yeah, but for sure there are there is big future of that kind of things. And on, for example, on the left is like fully generated inside of like neural network. So outcome is the sequence of 2D frames. Yeah, and it has no source in 3D or what in other space. Yeah, it's just born 2D. And on the right side is the examples of 3D. On the right side, it's collaboration between people and neural networks, but the bottom one is an infinite live stream of this imaginary imagined by neural network characters who provides them with dialogues. Yeah,
it's like a sitcom generated by GPT and visualized also with I think neural networks.
Yeah. I think it was visualized with just
it's like a 3D scene, but somehow
but dialogues
where to put the characters. Yeah. And another thing, like we mentioned GPT, and I think it's a big topic right now, all these large language models. And I think it opens up a lot of possibilities for automated cinema, like in terms of production of automated scenarios, automated dialogues. You can even create like dialogues between two characters. Like there is a website called Infinite Conversation between Werner Herzog and Slavoj Žižek. I think it's quite bright example of how we use the neural networks to create certain scenes, certain dialogues that never happened in the real life. And when we're talking about language models, I think we can notice this shift, the paradigm shift, I think, from the graphic user interface to text or to audio, maybe language user interface, let's say so, because it's much more natural for people to give instruction with the voice rather than clicking mouse or keyboard. So right now we have these computers closer to our biological reality, let's say so, because we can see the output and instruct the computer with our voice, and it's pretty cool.
Right, but when we start instructing the computer with our biofeedback or our gaze or it's more subtle affective aspects of our bodies that aren't
Kartoshka.
Oh
yeah, and also when we talk about neural networks and generative neural networks especially, Provides, can you show the next slide about model cannibalism?
Marakovka.
Marakovka, yeah. So there is a big problem appears because the amount of generated content that was produced by neural networks like with Midjourney, with Stable Diffusion, ChatGPT, whatever, it grows exponentially because everyone become AI experts these days. And contribute to this movement. Yeah, and this on the one hand, it's really amazing how easy right now to create the content with the neural networks, because like 2 years ago or maybe even a year ago, you have to be like a little
bit programmer.
Expert. Yeah, a little bit programmer. Yeah, and right now you don't need anything but
programmer.
like the ability to type the instruction. Yeah, But on the other hand, we have the problem that all of these models, they are trained on the data scraped from internet, like either it's images or text, or whatever, or videos for video generative models. But as soon we threw out a lot of generated content to the internet, the next models, the next neural networks will be trained on this generated content as well. So they were somehow eat themselves and produce a new kind of media that is no longer real, because the
no longer based
on
the real.
No longer based on the real. So I think it's kind of like faking the reality, because we are moving from the real world to the digital one, and then we substitute the real world in this digital reality. So it's quite scary, but also it's quite inspiring, because it's quite interesting what kind of stuff the computers will produce in 5 years. Will it be similar to the world outside the window, or it will be completely different stuff? Marakovka.
This is also the continuation of the same topic. Is for example, right now, whatever you make and post in the internet will be the part of the future data sets. So you basically, whatever you do, doesn't matter how many likes you have on that, how many people watch this. This is going to be a part of the artificial intelligence to come. Yeah. So we kind of everybody forming this this monster of this or this beauty. I don't know. Probably it's the biggest thing. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And what I also wanted to add, could you revert back to the this one, like I said before, this shift from tool to persona, is also in terms of interface. I think what we have now is shift from navigation to communication, which means before we had these interfaces with pages, with buttons, with something. So if you want to reach certain place, you have to go through these labyrinths of windows, and to find the final thing you want. But with this audio or text inputs, you saying where you want to go straight away. You're not saying that I want to open window 1, window 3, window 5. You want you just saying where you want to go, and you appear there. And this is also, I think, epistemic shift in that case.
Oh my God, Yancy is pronouncing a death of Windows. And, it's natural that Microsoft purchased OpenAI. It's not without a reason.
Yeah, they feel the same.
Crazy. I know. It's the most cinematic thing is the stock market. This is the last thing, which is the participatory cinema, which is how the collaborative pipeline and the automation actually enable human agency in more collaboration. So we've been teaching workshop free and open to all around the world. We teach the pipeline, which updates itself every 2 weeks now, I think. And some of our work and our students' work get to be exhibited. And the most magical thing is that because we are always teaching online workshop and some of them have never met each other. And then they managed to like form a group, a collective, and then they publish a real academic paper based on just meeting virtually from the workshop, which I think is a totally whole new world. And this is one of the most recent workshops we taught in Hong Kong, where after watching the cinema, we actually invite citizens back to remodel urban design stimulated by storytelling from the world building, which I think it can do so much more added value to social problems, to urban problems than, you know, what we think is just making weird stuff on Chat GPT, but no, actually. So much more can happen.
Another good point about this Hong Kong project is that it's all related to the actual site, like real part of Hong Kong, and the guys were interacting with the people who live there, who experience this, let's say, area, yeah, and they reimagined that together with artificial intelligence, local community, and the guys itself. So I think it's a interesting like ecosystem happening.
Yeah, ecosystem. Yeah, so that's us. Sorry, we're running a little bit late in time, but welcome to get in touch with us and follow us on Instagram. We are friendly people.
Thanks for your attention.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Do we still want to do questions, or are we completely out of time?
Yeah. Do we have questions?
We have many questions here.
Oh, wow.
Really?
I mean, your presentation was very interesting. I'm actually having some difficulty to formulate my thoughts, in the sense that you've crossed so many topics, from cinema to environments, building environments, elaborating on pictures and participation. And so maybe I will start with a question that was just typed on the chat, which is, how can people participate in your workshops? Cinema.
So the easiest way, I think, it's to keep track of our Instagram, because we posting our upcoming events, and they happening different parts of the world, and online, offline, and it's always different. For example, for this Hong Kong workshop, I think it was only for Hong Kong residents only, and so it's always different. So it's better to stick with Instagram.
Yeah, and
Instagram.
I also think if you don't want to wait for the announcement on Instagram, you can ask some local institutions to invite us to make a workshop. I think it's the fastest way to get to the workshop.
Yeah, reach out and express interest. We also have a Discord server that you can join and focus there too.
I forgot about Discord.
Yeah,
but you have created that.
I created, and I'm the only guy who posted there, but I forgot about it.
So, I mean, in the future, we might invite you to actually do a workshop here. I think that would be very interesting. Another question also from the audience. I'm going to post it here on the chat. Maybe it's better for you to actually see it. I'll read it. So with regards to volumetric cinema, do you think strategies to mitigate VR-induced motion sickness will always need to be factored in to into the creative process? And there's a second part to that question, which I'm now posting. Or do you concern that will eventually dissipate once more people become accustomed to the technology?
That's really interesting because you're connecting volumetric cinema with VR. I think volumetric cinema doesn't necessarily have to live in VR, but I think the concerns about VR will always be there. There's some interesting studies from the neurophysics lab at UCLA that they study VR's effect on the brain in mice, and they see that 60% of the hippocampus shuts down in VR. So I think that will always be the case because our bodies require more than two senses to have a perception of space. I think VR will always have, mess up our body's inputs. But I think volumetric cinema can exist not just in VR. I think maybe XR might be a more feasible place for it to function. It can also exist on a screen. It doesn't, the tool, the way that we experience volumetric cinema isn't really bound by one specific screen interface.
Yeah, I have more radical feeling about that. But it's not like near future, but right now I'm afraid to say that it's not in the near future because, for example, our current, we were expecting like 2030 at least.
Five.
But, yeah, but it's 2023 right now, almost everything kind of happened. So I think that VR is just in between step where so I think all these environments, 3D or all these things, at some point they will be happening right inside our brains without this, eye interactions, like, because right now VR is just a small LCD screen in front of your eyes, which sounds like a like something not really
volumetric, yeah.
not really volumetric actually. Yeah. And in case of, for example, these neural networks, blast and nerve, for example, yeah, they have on the bottom layer they have neural structure, yeah, and in your brain you have neural structure, so maybe at some point they will find a way to interact with each other yeah, directly. But it's super scary.
Yeah, actually it's quite interesting research on how the transformer neural networks perceive the spatial information like up, down, and so on. This concept, and it's pretty similar to how our brain capture these concepts. So who knows? Maybe it's real, real future. It will really merge together.
I agree with what Yancy was saying. Like we used to have the age of computers and then laptops, but then we see China completely leapfrogged, skip that phrase and jump into the mobile phone era. And then maybe tomorrow Africa doesn't even use the mobile phone. They'll just use some other devices that we can't even imagine. So it's yeah. So it's not just like a horseless carriage that becomes a car, but something that you can't imagine.
Yeah, maybe VR will stop making us sick once we can input all senses from the user interface.
Yeah, I think we can also connect these ideas that you are discussing also with this idea of uncanny valley, right? At which point are we getting used to all these new technologies? And you also mentioned in the talk that there is we are going through a moment in which these tools are being democratized, right? Everyone has access to them. And so how do you see these sudden transitions, and at which point do you think we are? Or do you think that people are getting used to this, or is it just too confusing, too scary, as Yanzi also mentioned a bit, that some topics are just too scary at this point? How do you feel about this?
I think it's kind of like when Claude Shannon came up with the binary digits, he didn't know that we would have artificial intelligence in a small computer mobile phone sort of situation. So we don't understand the consequences of what we're doing. We don't understand the implications. And yeah, it's scary not because of the tool, but because we don't understand, and no one's really looking closely at the consequences of our own doing. So
another topic that I wanted to bring to the discussion, and that you briefly mentioned at the end, is this idea of participation, right? So you mentioned, so you started with volumetric cinema, and at some point you were discussing how we are able to create these environments. So how do you see the participation of users into building these shared environments in which each one of us can actually contribute to the environment? Also a bit related, you briefly mentioned the idea of metaverse, which at this point also makes sense to bridge in, right? And how do you see that people can actually bring and build these shared environments which are shared by many people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we were first discussing it in 2019, metaverse wasn't even a term. So
yeah, but actually we were discussing the metaverse, but we just didn't have
no, it's
the
called
word
the
metaverse.
metaverse.
Yeah. Yeah, but one thing that I think we were all really excited about, and it's a convergence point in the film, if you guys watch it, is this kind of idea that every user live streams their own environment three-dimensionally. So like the ability to actually bring whatever space we're in 3D and in this collective space. And how does that become a foundational groundwork for participating and collaborating from?
So yeah, our like visualization of that was like the different streams intersecting with each other and forming this space for the people sharing the same. Basically, yeah, it's a meeting point of their streams, let's say.
And that could be people or polar bears or environments. Like it doesn't need to necessarily be human agents, right? Like self-driving cars are also reconstructing spaces all the time. So being able to switch between these different three-dimensional streams. And what does that do in terms of participation? Maybe Provides can speak to that.
Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, it's such an important question, because just by streaming 3D data into the same environment, it's awesome, but it doesn't really have any meaning. It's just like data compression, where semantics is irrelevant even when Shannon was writing the first white paper, right? So even the term metaverse has no meaning. It's trying to harness on the financial industry of video gaming, but still I go buy video games every week and I don't even pay a dime in a metaverse. And I think it's because there's no meaning in metaverse right now. It's trying to bootstrap community engagement. It's trying to advertise. It's trying to say that it will be the future, but the future has to have this semantic cultural side where every one of us can connect, not just people who speak English, but, you know, Chinese backgrounds, Arabic backgrounds, African backgrounds. And now that has not been embedded. It has not been an inclusive, accessible tools. And that's why it hasn't become a cult or subcult or culture yet. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that maybe Zuckerberg has to solve, like why Facebook has culture and metaverse doesn't have culture.
And yeah, the recent news from that field that this all these metaverse guys, they becoming gaming platforms. So yeah, the word metaverse just like shrinking back again
into video gaming.
Yeah. So it's a process of like forming, shaping this thing that we don't really understand. Yeah, that's why I think we will go through different stages, namings, and so on. And yeah, probably it will look like something we can't imagine.
let me just add this one more thing. So when board and computer first got on the desk in the 80s, it created the dot-com bubble because there was no two-way communication, there was no platform, right? That's why the financial assessment of the actual tool was actually much bigger than the actual social value. And in 20 years, in the 2000, after there was the bubble, people realized actually we need to get user to actually be able to input in the space, right? So 20 years. And since the start of virtual reality tools like metaverse stuff, it was also the 2000s, and now it's 20 years. So I think Zuckerberg sort of see this, I don't know him, but this 20-year time frame, it should have been more compressed, right? Because we're going faster exponentially, but it just doesn't, something's not right,
Yeah, I have to say I'm very skeptic about this metaverse thing, and it was rather a provocation than actually. Yeah, I'm very skeptic.
But it has its own like function in the history, let's say, yeah, because metaverse was the reaction for the COVID and for the lack of instruments and to connect people. And it was a nice attempt, actually. It's not a bad thing, because right now we have a lot of these like platforms where you can interact spatial, like audio, spatial audio, like 3-dimension things happening.
Yeah,
and
human reconstruction, and a lot of tools was developed because of metaverse, but the metaverse itself didn't develop into the thing. Yeah, maybe it's just a first step, and it will happen later, but who knows how it will be.
Well, I have two more questions, and so the first is to shift a bit to the beginning of your presentation, in which you started by discussing some work of art. So, for example, you've shown Las Meninas, I think, from Velázquez, and how you can elaborate in this work of art. And for me, it's very interesting, this idea that you can actually produce content and go beyond this initial the starting point, right? You have a work of art, and how can you transmediate this work of art that's in 2D into a 3D environment, and with that build new narratives? So that for me, it's very interesting. Do you have plans to keep on working in this, and how do you pick the work of arts how would you pick the work of arts that you would work on? I'm not sure if this makes sense as a question, but for me, it's very interesting, this idea of elaboration.
Yeah. First of all, just to clarify, the 3D modeling was actually done by other people. So we put their references down at the bottom. But yeah, I completely agree with you. So just X, Y axes, and now we make it 3D. So we're adding one layer of information that's actually exponentially more from the Z axes. Yeah, that's why when we tie that back to the time voxel, we realize it's compressing into a model and then expand that into reality. Yeah, that I think. Sorry, the original question.
You mean the work with the
Las Meninas
works of art, yeah.
So my question was more in terms of how do you see getting this initial material, and it can be, for example, 2D, and out of them expanding, right? So this idea of actually using these machine learning techniques to actually go beyond what the work of art actually shows. And in my opinion, it has a lot of potential to create new narratives, which I think we briefly mentioned, right? Out of a small picture, we can actually look around and try have the machine actually build something that's not true, right? For example, in painting, we don't have the painter actually paint what's around, or most painters probably don't, even though they imagine. but all of a sudden we can elaborate on that and actually create new narratives. So I mean, I don't know if I actually had a question for that, but I would be interested in knowing if this is something that you would like to build on that, because for me it was a very interesting topic at the beginning of your presentation.
I think a great example of how you can work with these pieces of art with the neural network is this in-painting models that are in DALL-E or in Stable Diffusion.
Or out-painting, yeah,
or out-painting. So you can transform the original media, original painting into something bigger, like you can reconstruct the whole room, and by combining them with depth map reconstruction neural networks, you can also add the spatial dimension, like third dimension. So I think it's one of the way how you can work with it. I'm not sure if we are planning to do that, but
I think it's always part of
we definitely
our
can
workflow.
Experiment with it. All of this neural network we like use in the workshops, in our workshops. So we can think on this topic. And maybe.
I like how this, for example, out painting, it works not with the initial image. It works with the context of this image. Yeah, when you zoom out, you see like another context in the frame of another context, and yeah, this is really interesting in terms of logic. How you can change the subject just by changing everything around it and produce another meaning, actually.
Yeah. It's even more fun when you know the history, how this in-painting and out-painting models was developed. Because right now, because of the clip, the neural network that can translate from like image to text and backwards, you can analyze the whole image. But before, to reconstruct like this in-painting models was using just a tiny bit of tiny region around the pixel, not the whole around the picture, not the whole picture. So it reconstructed the thing.
It has no understanding of what's inside the picture.
Yeah. It's just understand the borders, and it's actually a big progress right now.
Ellie?
And another thing, I think, cool in that the same context about the art and how to extract or add new meanings to that is this how this Van Eyck Arnolfini portrait actually reminds me this Blade Runner movie. Yeah, it has the same like spherical mirror there, and it was like moving the camera around that, and explores that something that was invisible before, or like obstacle because of obstacle or something.
Definitely very interesting, and it's something that I would like to see much more. If you keep on working on that, I would be very interested. One last question, also because we are already too long on time, has to do with audio, right? Because most of what we've seen at your presentation has to do with visual, but have you considered or have you worked on or do you plan to work on the audio?
I can explain why we don't have a lot of audio stuff, because the neural networks that work with audio, they developed very actively just for the last couple of years. And at the moment when we started the current, there was just a couple of them that was working slowly, and you had to have powerful computers which are not like affordable, and the results was not that great. So this is why I think we didn't touch the sound at that point, but I'm really interested in this direction, like how we can create these infinite streams of audio, how we can how we can automate the audio environment in the volumetric cinema as well, because because of these multimodal neural networks, we can analyze what happens in the environment, translate it to the text, and then translate this text to sound and play this sound. And I think it's an interesting topic. And also, if we speak about digital personas, like it's already happening, and you have a lot of tutorial on YouTube how you can clone the voice, how you can convert the text to speech, and so on. So it's a big thing, yeah.
And another problem is the presentation mode itself, because the sound is a linear way of like consuming or receiving or perceiving, let's say, information. And yeah, it's really hard to like mix it with your presentation and the audio, so everybody have to stop at this point and listen to this infinite audio live stream, which is kind of, yeah, it's the problem to solve.
That's actually a very, very important question, because if we have the 5 senses, then synthetic intelligence should be able to process all 5 senses. And now it's really focused on visual or textual, which is like our mouth and our eyes. And I think from the information theory perspective, everything is just signals. It doesn't matter the meaning, right? So what is stopping us from it? And I think one of it is that actually our eyes see everything in 2D. So it's 3D world, 2D eyes, and then 3D brain, right? But then for sound, it's different. Sound has always been 3-dimensional. If we close our eyes, we know that we receive signals from all directions, right? We don't turn it into 2D. So I think that's also one of the technical difficulties that AI, it's currently not so good with 3D. And yeah, it's an important question.
Yeah, well, sound
nice point.
is vibrational, right? It affects our bodies, and so do other signals in space. And I think this brings it back to the previous question you asked about AI's ability to produce narrative, and AI's ability to produce good narratives, right? Narratives that affect us or move us, because ultimately the reason we like art is because it tries to communicate an emotion or feeling that we as humans have vibrationally in our bodies. And I don't think AI is anywhere near being able to produce these experiences that move us, whether that's visually or through sound. Maybe one day we'll get it in all 5 senses, and maybe that day is sooner than we think. But right now it's still in development.
And
so we would be a simulation ourselves.
Actually, we have explored that topic when we were thinking before making current, and we were in Tokyo, and we were talking a lot about biofeedback loops, and we were talking about forgotten like nose part of the human, because it's really hard for technology right now to transmit or reproduce the smells, the sounds, and so on. But there in Tokyo, actually, we've been to a lab where the guys were working with these artificial noses, and this is extremely complicated part. And I think the problem is just with the technology, that it's, for example, visual is like dominating, and sound is also good, and then it's worse and worse, like
worse and worse,
and 6th sense is like not working at all right now.
Only a
Well-
woman has sex.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
Well, at the pace that things are going, I would imagine that pretty soon we will have development
Sure. Yeah.
to help with,
Mhm.
if not all, many of these questions, I would say. All right, so please don't leave. I'm closing the session and then ending the stream, but I would like to first thank you for being here. I know that you did an extreme effort to be all here because you are in different time zones and it's not the
Yeah,
best
2
time to do it.
a.m. and Ellie woke at 6.
2 a.m. Oof, oof. I really appreciate that. It's very nice, and I think it was a very interesting discussion. I would keep on going, but it's 2 a.m. for provides. So yes,
Yeah.
I would like to thank you, and just going to share that the next session will be on the 26th of April, and it will be on the event CMD Talks. So not Ciclo de Conversas, but CMD Talks, which is more related to research and to our doctoral program. But it will happen the same it will be streamed to YouTube. And one difference is that the time will not be exactly the same. But we will communicate this through our socials. And for now, this is everything. And I will thank everyone for the questions, thank to our speakers, and see you in the next session.